Pretty much what I'm going to talk about in this video is pretty much how ridiculous tipping has gotten. Tipping culture in America, in particular, is absolutely crazy. And it's something that needs to be talked about because it's one of those things in life that people just kind of accept and do, even though most people think the same thing I do and think it's stupid. And that's why I think it's so dumb that tipping is mainly an American thing. If tipping was like across the world, it's kind of hard to complain because, there are a lot of stupid things that the entire world does, but you can't really escape it. But when you're in America and you live like this and you think it's kind of normal, and then you go to another country, you're like, what the fuck? Why are we doing this? People think you're crazy when you go to a new country and you try to tip them. They're like, what are you talking about, bro? I'm just doing my job. I don't need more money to give you a fucking coffee or bring you your food. Some of them actually get offended if you do that. But when you go to America, and then if you leave the country and go somewhere else, and then you come back, you really realize how dumb it is. Because then you'll go to Starbucks and get a coffee, they'll fucking pour it, and then they'll hand it to you, and then they tilt that goddamn screen in front of your face and say, how much you want to tip me? Pretty much with like a gun behind the thing. Yeah, a social gun, as in like, you're not a cheap bastard, are you? Come on, give me your money. If you don't, I'm gonna think you're a bad person. People get guilt-tripped into tipping. It's ridiculous. That's how they get you. Because people don't want to feel like a bad person, so they tip, even when they think it's dumb. Even though in their head, they're thinking, what the hell did you do? You didn't do anything. Why do I have to give you 20%? All you do is hand me a fucking bagel or a cup of coffee. But then they tell their thing and they look at you and like, oh, 0. You're a cheap bastard. I got it. They make sure to be there standing there looking at you and guilt trip you because you can't escape fast enough before they know if you tipped or not. And if you don't, they're gonna be pretty sour. That's the annoying part. It's not even about your own kindness or if you think they did good. It's more of like an obligation that like if you don't tip, then they're gonna be upset with you. Or if you don't, it's more like you're being held morally hostage in that way, where if you don't tip, people will think you're a bad person. That's not what it's supposed to be. A tip is supposed to be like, hey, this person did a really fucking good job. I want to reward them for that, and I'm gonna give them more money for that. Not, you have to do it or else. That's stupid. That's another thing. Tipping used to be if you did a really, really good job and somebody wanted to make them happy and be like, look, you helped me a lot. You did, above and beyond. You brought me my food. You were really nice. You were funny. You told me some fucking stories. Whatever. And like, I'm gonna give you more money. But now it's evolved like a fucking cancer in society to where everybody gets a tip no matter what. And if you don't tip, I think the expected one moved up to 20% now. And for everybody. And it's more of like, if they did a really bad job, then you don't tip. It's become like the opposite. And it's really annoying that it's become more of an expectation that you tip instead of a bonus if they did a really good job. And even when it used to be just like restaurants and stuff, like I said, it already creeped into other stuff where people will do nothing and they'll want to tip. The most annoying thing now is how companies will pretty much make you pay their wages by the tip. When they hire somebody, they pretty much make their living like a hostess or something. They'll make most of the money on tips, which means they make the actual customer have to pay the wages through tips. Because if the worker doesn't get tipped, then they can't make enough to make it an actual worthwhile job. And now it's more like the customer versus the worker instead of, like the owner is just sitting there on their golden throne, like laughing at them. Whereas it should be, the worker should be paid a livable wage so that the customer doesn't have to tip them to make it a worthwhile job. But now they think they can just get away with that, and then if you don't want to tip, it's your problem. Either you don't want to tip and you're the bad person, or the worker doesn't make enough money. It's one of those two things, and it's never taken up. People don't really think about the fact that it's because if the manager or the company actually paid them enough, they wouldn't need the tip all the time. That's the annoying part. That's what people really should be mad about. If people actually have like an annoyance with it, it's usually on like a kind of like a first level kind of thing, where they'll be like annoyed at people asking them to tip more, but they don't really think about why. Like obviously people who need the money are gonna have to ask for a tip. It's not really their fault. It's more the fault of the actual company not paying them enough, and that's what it should be. That's what people really should be mad about, is the fact that the company isn't paying them enough to live. And if people actually realize that, they can put some pressure on the company and make them actually pay more, which would, I think, make the tipping problem a little better and a little less needy by the people always asking for tips, or always like shoving that thing in your face and saying like, "Yo, I did this, tip me now, like how much you want to tip?" In the past few years, tipping has gotten out of control and it's become really annoying every time you go somewhere and you're already paying a lot for whatever thing you're getting, and then they want you to pay even more, and then if you don't, like the worker's gonna be like, "Come on, bro." Like the people will be mad at each other. Like the worker's gonna be like, how am I supposed to live now? You're not, like, I need that $5 tip. I need that $5 tip, or else all of my, like, I'm not gonna have enough money to live. And then the customer's like, "Bro, I'm not gonna pay $30 for a goddamn hamburger. This is ridiculous." So both people are mad at each other. Neither of them realize that the one who's really at fault there is the owner not paying the worker a livable wage. The worker wouldn't have to get mad at the customer because they wouldn't need the money, and the customer wouldn't have to either tip as much as they need to. It wouldn't be such like an obligation they have to do, and they could keep their money, or they could actually just feel less pressure even if they did want to tip, because nobody wants to feel pressured into giving their money away, because most times people who tip don't do it because they want to do it. They do it because they feel like they have to. They feel morally obligated, or like a social pressure. Over the years, this kind of problem, especially in America, has gotten out of control and ridiculous. Every time I see a situation like this, it makes me annoyed because it doesn't make any sense why it has to be this way or why it has become like this. It's not logical at all. Alright, that's it. Scram.